On the 24th of July 2023, from Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, en route to Antigua to St. Kitts. I'm also excited that Caribbean Airlines will commence routes from Bridgetown, Barbados to St. Kitts on the 29th of July 2023. The airline will use its 72-seater ATR aircraft for these newly announced services. The impact of this will tremendously be positive for all of us. Our people will have the convenience of island hopping within hours, eliminating the recent challenge of traveling across the region. The restoration of interregional travel to our federation, especially at this point in time, is a major achievement for all of us. My team and I continue to sustain partnerships, ensuring the Caribbean region returns as our second largest source market. Caribbean Airlines has maintained a stellar reputation as one of the leading air carriers in the region. Therefore, I extend my deepest gratitude to their team for extending their hand in partnership to make today's announcement a reality and for their unwavering support. Our tourism industry continues to punch above its weight. More flights mean more heads in bed and new business opportunities, thus indirectly creating more job opportunities for our people. Our people have more places to visit, avail advanced medical facilities, convenience to our students traveling to and from university, and remarkable cultural exchanges between the region. Caribbean Airlines, we welcome you and we look forward to this great partnership moving forward. I thank you. In fact, we are pleased to announce the introduction of the JetBlue flight non-stop from JFK into St. Kitts, commencing November 2nd, 2023. And this would be 3 times weekly. I think it's on Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And this, of course, adds to our airlift strategy internationally. That's in addition to the flights that we have coming out of Miami, Atlanta, and the UK internationally. And of course, out of New York as well.
The New York market, how important is the New York market to St. Kitts?
The New York market is in fact our #1 source market, and so the introduction of this flight is significant for us as a destination.
You've got Music Fest coming up this month. How are plans shaping up for Music Fest? And do you have adequate airlift coming into the destination so patrons across the region can enjoy what you have on offer?
Right. Well, I am pleased to announce that we're ahead of schedule. The team is working extremely hard to make sure that this edition of the St. Kitts Music Festival, which happens to be our 25th edition since the inception, they're working extremely hard to make sure that it is the best ever. And so I'm excited. I can't wait to see how we execute when the time comes. In relation to airlift, we recently announced with our partners, American Airlines, I think when we were at Roots, I think it's additional lift for the season. Our partners, American Airlines, would have added flights on the Wednesday up to the Sunday to cover the festival, the period in which we're having the festival. And so we've also partnered with Inter-Caribbean Airways in adding additional lift to the destination from our region, and they would be flying for the entire week daily to provide lift for our friends in the region, to accommodate us for the festival.
From an arrivals perspective, how does it look for 2023? Are you recovering well in this post-pandemic phase?
Absolutely. We've actually seen a demand for the destination We recently came, well, the team came from meeting with our partners, and we met with United. They have said the route performed extremely well, and we've in fact extended the service with United so that it ends in August as opposed to in March. And that's from November, the winter season, onwards to August of 2024. Air Canada has announced a 35% increase as well for the upcoming season in capacity. So we're super excited about that. Inter-Caribbean as well has indicated that the route has performed extremely well, and they've increased the size of the aircraft as well. So I'm extremely pleased with how we are recovering post-COVID.
Are you approaching a full recovery when you compare to 2019 numbers? Are you almost there?
Not quite, but we're almost there.
Many tourists are looking for greater experiences when they visit the Caribbean. It's not about the product, it's about the experience. And you've launched Venture Deeper. How has that resonated with your guests?
Incredibly successful. We launched the new campaign last year, and it is in keeping with the travel trends where visitors are in fact looking for more ways where they can immerse themselves into the destination. And the Venture Deeper campaign is the essence of that. In fact, it encourages visitors to venture beyond the surface and have a more experiential experience with the destination.
How has St. Kitts' marketing efforts amplified what tourists are looking for these days, which is a greater appreciation for a destination's history and culture?
Right. So the Venture Deeper campaign focuses heavily on history, our culture, our culinary, who we are as a people. For example, with the Brimstone Hill Fortress, which is a UNESCO heritage site, the campaign resonates with how we've built, how we've maintained, and how we continue to exhibit, sites like that, reflecting and, of course, paying homage to the people who went before us. We believe strongly that we are a product of where we came from, and so it tells a story as to who we are, our food, our history, and we are focusing heavily on heritage tourism going forward as well.
You've launched the campaign for the Summer of Fun. What is that all about, and what are some of the fun things that one can experience this summer? Of course, you've got the music festival, but once that comes to an end, what is next in St. Kitts?
Right. So the Summer of Fun campaign is an innovative way for us to bring visitors to the destination during what we call the slow period. And it starts with the 25th edition of the St. Kitts Music Festival, where we have a number of acts lined up to perform over 3 days, starting on the 22nd to the 24th of June, as well as a number of other initiatives. We have CPL, that's the Caribbean Premier League. It's known as the biggest party in sports, and that is in August. We're also going to be having initiatives out of Nevis, such as the Nevis Mango Festival, which is in July, and Culturama, which is Nevis's carnival, which is going to be in August as well. In St. Kitts, we have the Restaurant Week, which is coming up in our July, and we're focusing heavily on our culinary, and this year we're focusing on pineapples. So our stakeholders are going to find creative ways to display food, drinks, and alcohol featuring the pineapple.
And of course, at the end of the year, you have your big carnival.
Absolutely.
Are we looking forward to that?
Definitely. In fact, the Carnival Committee has announced that they're going to launch Carnival at the St. Kitts Music Festival. And so from all accounts, it's going to be great.
Finally, you're here in New York for Caribbean Week in New York activities, meeting with CTO,
right,
member countries and territories, fellow ministers and commissioners of tourism. How important are these meetings to St. Kitts and Nevis over the next few days from a regional perspective?
Right. It's necessary and absolutely necessary that we continue to make ourselves available to meet with our partners at these types of meetings. For us, we see it as an opportunity to discuss innovative ways to move the industry forward as a region, and of course, we would not miss any opportunity to be a part of these discussions.
Seaborn as a company started coming to St. Kitts about 15 years ago when we started coming with our original 3 ships, which were Pride, Spirit and Legend. And that partnership continued as our fleet was growing, our partnership in St. Kitts was growing as well. So continuing with Odyssey, Sojourn and Fiscal, visiting your capital and then coming here as well into the beautiful Carambola Beach. The latest addition to our fleet, which is Seaborn Pursuit, which is anchored here today, has been only delivered to Seaborn 2 months ago. And I think the successful partnership between St. Kitts and Seaborn, as well, not only Seaborn, but the cruising industry as well, it is the fact that we already came to St. Kitts, came here to provide to our guests memorable experiences coming to the beaches, enjoying the hospitality of your island and enjoying it being here. So it's very, very successful partnership, which I'm quite sure that's going to continue in the future.
For us as a destination, I think it is in keeping with our overall strategic plan to position the destination on the luxury travel market. This is one of the newest ships built about 2 months ago. It shows that we still have a strong partnership with Carnival, and we are positioning ourselves on the luxury market. And I think it's a good indication that we are on track in terms of our strategic plan. Well, for the upcoming season, we can expect a number of luxury vessels, like I said, all a part of the strategic plan, which will translate into higher spend. I think it would give an economic boost to the Federation when we have high spending passengers. And so that's one of the things for the season. We also have a number of inaugural calls, so we'll see a number of inaugural calls as well, I think between 15 to 18. So we're in for a good season as it relates to cruise tourism.
I think this has been an amazing event, especially for the first time that we're actually doing it. I was lucky enough to be a judge, so I was able to judge the pork, the fish, and the chicken, and it was really tough. I think this has been an outstanding crowd that's come out here for this, and I think next year it's going to be even bigger and better. So I think it's been a really big success.
Well, to be honest, I came out here very, very, very prepared. I know that I had this. I've been hearing it all the time that I got the best pork, so I just came out here to display it.
Well, the feel actually really and extremely great. I mean, it ain't easy to be number one. You know, I mean, a lot of time, hard work, you know, and I really appreciate this. I really appreciate everything that management have done to make this happen. And I'm actually looking forward for more of this. If it could happen every day, I will be grateful.
For me personally, it was just a journey, something I wanted to pursue. I'm grateful for it. I don't know if next year I'm going to be back to defend the trophy or what, but it is what it is. It was a great experience. Thank tourism for the experience. Looking forward to see something new next year, at least add something to it. If you like it and you got a passion for it, you will enjoy it.
Actually, when I thought about Grill Fest, I was actually thinking about our local community. It was actually during COVID, and so many persons were suffering because those individuals who depend on individuals to come and buy their food, they weren't able to make a living. And also, when we think about it, the community needs to be involved in tourism. Tourism is everybody's business. And the main goal of tourism is to reach every single person. And so if that is not happening, then we're not benefiting from the industry. And so that was one of the main reasons for having this event, because now we can have our local grillers on showcase. We can also promote our local cuisine. And as part of our Venture Deeper campaign, this is critical because we want our visitors to immerse themselves in the experience. I had a wonderful time at the event. We did come out and we had a great time. The grillers were able to interact with the crowd. I think the crowd had a good time. We had gifts. We thank our sponsors for coming on board with us. And now it's evening time and we have live entertainment. The crowd is still buzzing. The crowd is still coming. And I think we've had a great time today.
How do you act for the SDGs?
I act for the SDGs by supporting our local market and stocking up on nutrient-rich fruits and vegetables.
We act for the SDGs when we clean up after ourselves when liming on the beach, to reduce litter on the land and in the sea.
I act for the Sustainable Development Goals by recycling natural material from my organic farm to responsibly create nourishing, cruelty-free products.
I act for the SDGs by creatively charting my own course as an artist and entrepreneur.
I act for the SDGs by partnering to minimize waste and fulfill the No Plastic Mondays promise.
I act for the SDGs by exercising regularly to maintain good health and well-being.
We act for the SDGs by coming together to have a voice so that our issues can be represented in national policy, development, and planning.
I act for the SDGs by diversifying and expanding education to visual arts inclusion.
I act by implementing sustainable agricultural practices such as hydroponics, ground cover, orchard farming, and all those things that you've seen outside.
I act by turning off all the lights and electronics in my class at the end of the day and educating my students on the importance of energy efficiency.
I act by producing a healthy organic harvest to feed communities.
We act for the SDGs by making sure to turn off the tap to conserve water when we are washing our hands.
I act by cooking healthy meals and being mindful and intentional about the foods I consume.
The 17 SDGs are our pathways to transformative sustainability. Let's create the future we want to see by acting now for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda.
St. Kitts and Nevis has made significant strides in implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our development initiatives over the past 2 decades have targeted accelerating economic growth with a focus on employment, resulting in a fall in the levels of poverty, improved social services, and expanded social protection for poor and vulnerable households. However, the pandemic caused massive disruption to people's lives and affected the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in areas such as poverty reduction, good health care, quality education, decent work, and economic growth. St. Kitts and Nevis's new National Development Planning Framework, which guides the country's development planning for the next 15 years, is well aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and the government's vision for the country to become a sustainable island state.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I am Shirima Matthew, and I'm honored to serve as your chairperson for this evening's Vital Community Consultation on the Federation's 2024 budget. I warmly welcome you all to this consultation aimed at facilitating inclusive dialogues and ensuring every voice is heard. Permit me at this time to recognize the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Education, Social Development, Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities, Ecclesiastical and Faith-Based Affairs and Housing, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley. Minister with responsibility for youth empowerment and aging and disabilities, social development and gender affairs, the Honorable Iseline Phillip. Ambassadors Leon Natta Nelson and Kenny Douglas, Cabinet Secretary Dr. Marcus Natta, Financial Secretary Hilary Hazel, Permanent Secretaries, Senior Government Officials. Apologies are in order for the absence of the Honorable Conway Maynard and Samuel Duggins, who are currently overseas on government business. Apologies are also in order for the absence of the Honorable Marsha Henderson, and we continue to pray for her speedy recovery. We asked that all phones be switched to vibrate or silent mode. Please and thank you. Before we proceed, kindly stand for the playing of the national anthem of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Following the national anthem, please remain standing while Veneries McCall, budget analyst within the Ministry of Finance, lead us in prayer to invoke God's presence for tonight's proceedings.
O land of beauty, our country where peace abounds, thy children stand free on the strength of will and love, with good in all our schools, St. Kitts and Nevis, a nation bound together with a common destiny. As stalwarts we stand for justice and liberty, with wisdom and truth we will serve and honor thee. No sword nor spear can conquer, for God will sure defend. His blessing shall forever to posterity
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this gift of another day. Lord, your word declares, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And we declare you as Lord of our lives and Lord of our blessed federation. We are gathered here to deliberate on our upcoming year's budget. We welcome you into our presence. We ask that you will grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I pray for each presenter and the moderator. I pray we give them clarity of mind and boldness. Lord, all these mercies are asked in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Kindly be seated. Allow me to introduce our esteemed panel. To my right is Nerissa Williams, Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment, joined by Van Roy Agard, a statistician at the Ministry of Sustainable Development. To my left, we have Versily Francis, Director of the Fiscal Affairs and Policy Unit of the Ministry of Finance, accompanied by Melissa Henry, an economist from the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment. The theme, Marching Forward on the Journey to a Sustainable Island State, is a reflection of the government's goals and/or collective values for the Federation's future. This consultation goes beyond mere data, aiming to shape a future aligned with our shared aspirations and establish a strong foundation for future generations. Tonight's hybrid event ensures everyone, both in person and online, can participate. After 4 presentations, we'll move to a Q&A session. Please get your questions ready. Your insights, whether from in the room or our diaspora, are highly valued. I urge everyone to actively engage, ask questions, and express your opinions. Collectively, we are molding the future of St. Kitts and Nevis. Let's together embark on this path towards sustainability, inclusivity, and growth. Before we continue, I acknowledge the presence of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, the Honorable Garth Wilkin. I now invite our first speaker, Permanent Secretary Nerissa Williams, to share insights on sustainable island state.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for your presence here with us, both in person and virtually. I begin tonight's discussion on our budget for 2024 and the journey to a sustainable island state. What is a sustainable island state in the context of St. Kitts and Nevis? Sustainability. This means that we are able to maintain over time a balance between our environment, economy, and equity. If any of these 3 are out of balance, it means that we will be in trouble. We must maintain this balance as well so that we have a future for our generations to come. For now, tomorrow, and in the long term. Our island state, surrounded by water, small and developing, positioned in the global south, vulnerable to tropical events. Our state, what is important for us? Our sovereignty. Twin islands, one nation. Our independence must be secured. This is why we are embarking on our sustainable island state journey. What is a sustainable island state in its definition? Minimizing vulnerability to external shocks. Is construction resilient? What category storm can our infrastructure withstand? Economic prosperity. Is a country doing well financially? Do our people have jobs, make good money, can afford the things they need and want? Social equity and social well-being. Are we fair and are we just in our dealings with each other? Do we ensure that our most vulnerable are taken care of? Responsible and equitable resource management. Are we being responsible with the use of our natural resources, ensuring that they are used in a sustainable and fair manner? Cultural heritage. How do we develop heritage-based tourism, for example, if we do not preserve our culture and heritage? Balanced development. Mentioned before, the economic, social, and environmental factors must be aligned. Why transform into a sustainable island state? Our exposure. Climate events. We are at a very high risk of exposure to climate events. Cost of energy is high as well. Food security, high as well. Droughts, water shortage, we are all experiencing these. That is a very high risk. Conflict, medium risk. Our susceptibility to pandemics, medium risk. We are a high-income country. That is a risk as well. It eliminates us from accessing certain financial resources for buoying our development and advancement as a country. What is the connection, the global connection to the local vision? Why do we want to aspire to attain a sustainable island state status? The Sustainable Development Goals, we are at the midway point, and the UN has advised that we are not on a trajectory to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals targets. When will Sustainable Island State status be achieved? Currently, we are collectively working towards energy security, water security, food security, increased recycling of household waste, smart, affordable homes, diversified tourism products, circular manufacturing, reduction in NCDs-related mortality, income generation outside of government, transition of government vehicles to electronic vehicles, and gender-sensitive planning. Here are some real targets. What do we want to achieve? Economic stability to avoid a 10-year setback from climatic events, a reduction of poverty across the Federation, eliminating the water shortages and mitigating drought impacts, energy affordability and elimination of fossil fuel dependence, provision of sufficient, affordable, and resilient housing. These real targets are buttressed by the pillars, the Sustainable Island State pillars: water security, energy security, food security, social protection, circular economy, sustainable settlements, and sustainable industries. What is your role in the process? There are 3 categories of participants. We are particularly focused at this time on beneficiaries. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis has an ethical and moral responsibility to prioritize the interests and well-being of those we serve. And that is at the heart of the Sustainable Island State vision. So, we begin with beneficiaries. There are the national stakeholders, which include, among others, the St. Kitts and Nevis Electric Company, St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Our local and external partners, we must not forget to mention. These are all critical players in the journey towards a sustainable island state. Would you consider these benchmarks as important goals and targets to be achieved? Would you appreciate a 100% literacy rate, 100% electric vehicle transformation, both government, public and private transportation? Would you appreciate that 10%, less than 10%, sorry, of the population lives below the poverty line? Is more than 70% of energy being renewable important to you and your individual families? Would we like to see 60% of food homegrown? Would we like to see that we achieve a number one status in the Caribbean in the ease of doing business profile? What about social and gender equity? Is that important for us? Is it important for us to achieve reserves of 3 years' worth of GDP? How do we move the process forward? At this time, we are here. We would like to hear from you what is important to you. I've asked some questions, provided some food for thought. We welcome you and your discourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. For our online audience, we're asking that you begin to submit your questions. They will be answered during the question and answer session. I now invite Mr. Van Roy Agard, who will delve into the economic indicators.
Good night to everyone. And I would adopt the protocol previously established in, saying once again, greetings. My presentation tonight would be on the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm presenting on behalf of the Ministry of Sustainable Development. The overview of what I'm about to present on is the highlights of the economy 2020 to 2021, highlights of the 2022 economic performance, the economic forecast for 2023 to 2027, and the Sustainable Small Island State Strategy 2023 to 2027. Don't worry, I'm going to make it sound better than it looks there. Okay, so what we're going to present on in the highlights of real GDP 2020 to 2021 is the pandemic and how it affected our economy. The main thing that we're going to look at here is that there was a 15.5% decrease in GDP, which is 368.6 million over that period of 2 years, 2020 and 2021. And, this significant shrinkage in economic activity is attributed to the decrease in the level of key sectors such as construction, distributive trade, tourism-related accommodations, and transportation services. The level of decline was softened by a continued operations of the public sector and the economic stimulus package of over 100 million. Now, if you look at this graph, as we say, going back to 2017, we had a small increase, a small growth rate for about 3 years, going from 2017 to 2019. And then we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and then there was a significant drop of negative, in the growth rate of negative 14.6%. And it also, from there, continued a further decline, but not so great of a decline, of negative 0.9%. And that would have combined to get the 15.5%. From there, we have now increased our GDP growth rate to 10.3 in 2022. And our estimate for 2023 is 3.9%. Now, here is a table, CARICOM COVID-19 GDP growth rate impact comparative analysis, right, as of April 2023. If you see any slight differences in figures, might have been revised. But if you look at the different countries, all of them would have shown the significant impact in the COVID-19 in 2020. And you can see that it was quite similar, a very big drop in 2020, and then from there is where the smoothing out process would have begun, and everybody would have, we tried to make adjustments to the COVID-19 pandemic, and as we are getting over it as a country and globally, we now increased our GDP growth rate. And so you can actually compare and see where St. Kitts was in that regard for all years, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Quite similar for a lot of countries. If you look at some of the indicators that would actually show this impact, the COVID-19 pandemic impact as well, we could first look at the visitors. Now we have a table here showing tourists, excursionists, cruise passengers, yacht passengers. Cruise passengers and yacht passengers are somewhat self-explanatory. Tourists, in this regard, how we define it is people who stay a night. So they would have booked an accommodation, whether it be a B&B, a guest house, or accommodation. They would have stayed a night, and that's a lot more money than an excursionist who would probably come and they would go to our our volcano, and then they would leave. They're not spending a night, but they have some sort of excursion. So looking at these numbers in 2019, we see the level that we were at for tourists, 122, coming up to a total of 1,187,752. The COVID pandemic would have decreased all these numbers to a total of 301,614 number of visitors. And then in 2021, it was 122,609. But as you can see, a big jump in 2022 as we have, reduced the restrictions and opened up our borders. So it's now flowing quite well. 587,493. So we're getting back there. And as you will see, I will go into 2023 and some forecasts later on. Another indicator in employment showing this same result is the employment. Now, these figures are the number of people employed in the particular sectors that we would have deemed key. Construction, wholesale and retail, hotels, and public administration. And as you can see, once again, you have in 2019 a total of 26,602. There's a drop in total in 23,359, but if you would go up to the hotels and restaurants, you will see the big drop from 2019 of 3,277 and 2,102 because we weren't getting the visitors. And then if you move across in hotels, you will see it's 1,869, further drop in 2021. But in 2022, as we said, now we are open up the borders, 2,662. It's another indicator to show what was happening in that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and how we are now coming out of it. The preliminary GDP estimates for 2022, the economy is estimated to have grown by 10.3% in 2022, following the prolonged impact of COVID-19 pandemic. This represents the beginning of the recovery following a 15.5 decline over the previous 2-year period. Key economic sectors of growth, if you missed it, wholesale, retail and trade, hotels and restaurants, transport, storage and communications, financial services, and public administration. You will see them in tables that I'm presenting on. Now, the performance of the key economic sectors in 2022, as you can see, they're considered key because of the percentage contribution they make to the GDP. So when there's an increase in a sector with a greater percentage contribution, it has a greater effect on the GDP. So that is why it's key. And then so you have the percentage change here of each and every one of them. So when you're going to see 135% change in a sector, in a key sector, you know, okay, well, there's something happening, and we're making positive steps. So in all, you know, this represents a 10.3. When you look at the total GDP, it represents a 10.3 increase when you look at all the different sectors, not just these key sectors. The economic recovery, I continue in that regard, in the indicators. This is just a summary of what I basically just said. But if you look at the GDP growth, year negative 0.9% in 2021, then you had 10.3, and now what we wanted to present here was the half year. This is what the estimates that we are doing. We're using a half year. So we've already collected some indicators for half year, and that is what we're making the projections on for 3.9 at this point. Now, the preliminary GDP estimates 2023, so we're in right now, seeing the key sectors once again, their percentage contribution and their percentage change, total of 3.9. But what I would draw your attention to on this slide is the notes that maybe would have been the main contributor, the main reasons why we had these increases in growth rate. So for construction, you know, we have an uptick in residential construction activities. For wholesale and retail trade, we have increase in consumerism and business services. Hotels and restaurants increase airlift to increase marketing efforts and airlift support. And transport and communication, return of cruise ships and passengers in large numbers and increase consumerism. Public administration, regularization of step workers, and new hiring. So the COVID-19 pandemic recovery continues. So now looking at the forecast as we move quickly along, starting from 2022, we had the 10.3 as previously mentioned, and the 3.9 as previously mentioned, the 3.6, and then we're making a forecast of 3.6, 3.3, and 3.2 for the years 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, respectively. So we use some trend analysis, and basically we tend not to move far, give huge increases far into the future because it's hard to anticipate what's happening far into the future. So that is why you'll see them look somewhat similar. So downside risks, you know, so even though we have this growth rate, projected growth rates forecasted, there are some downside risk to those levels, even though as of right now, the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis is on track to surpass the pre-pandemic GDP estimates level of 2019 by 2024/2025. So such things that may affect it would be the ripple effects of geopolitical tensions, which is slash wars on the domestic economy. You know, we have a number of wars going on right now, and all these things affect us. What happens around us actually does affect us. Slower than expected growth of the global economy due to rising prices and supply chain issues. Sometimes you see increased prices, sometimes the reason is supply chain issues. delays in the start of work on the major local construction projects, the impact of adverse weather conditions, severe hurricane, floods, droughts, due to the impact of climate change. So, climate change, we're having more heat and then therefore is more active hurricane seasons. Thank God we haven't had one to really come here and do a lot of damage, and we hope that continues. But all of these are risks that are possible. So in the medium term economic outlook, the government is pursuing the transformation of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable small island state. And in this vision, one wants to generate jobs and business opportunities and to bring improved living standards, to build sustainable economic growth and development, to enhance socioeconomic resilience, and this is seen in the 7 pillars, under the 7 pillars of progressive actions that I'm now going to go through so that we can just have an idea as to what these 7 pillars and be reminded of what these 7 pillars are. So these 7 pillars will start with food security. Now, the objective of food security, the pillar, is to increase food availability of good quality and low price, locally grown agriculture produce. The plan there is to have investments in crop and livestock production to boost output and reduce food import bill by 25% by 2025. In number 2 is the green energy transition, the start of the transition from the heavy dependency on fossil fuel to solar, wind, or geothermal alternatives. Investments in the renewable energy with a target set of 30% by 2025 and near 100% by 2030. In number 3, the objective of economic diversification is to enhance policies to promote business development. The plan is development of the cannabis industry, particularly focusing on research and development. Number 4 is sustainable industries, where the objective here is to promote business activities that minimize environmental impact. The plan is implementation of the strategic plans that incorporate building climate change, resilience, and gender equity. Number 5, the creative economy. Develop the art forms into viable business enterprises, and the plan is to provide support to the sustainable growth and development of the creative arts industry. Number 6, the COVID-19 economic recovery, as it continues to support the rebuilding of small and micro business in the tourism and agriculture sector. And the plan here is to establish a national small business development center to advance entrepreneurship, small business development. The last pillar, social and health protection. The objective here is to enhance health and social safety nets for household persons in need. The plan to reform the country's social safety net program to bring fairness and equity. It also is to upgrade the community facilities, including social centers, health centers, and sporting facilities. And finally, the construction of a first-class and climate-smart hospital. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agard. Our third presenter, Versely Francis, will explore financial considerations.
Good evening, all. Allow me to adopt the protocol that has already been established. I am Versely Francis, Director of Fiscal Affairs.
Sorry, my apologies. Allow me to recognize the presence of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, National Security, Citizenship and Immigration, Health and Social Security, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew. Thanks for gracing us with your presence.
Good evening again. I am Vasily Francis, Director of Fiscal Affairs and Policy within the Ministry of Finance, and I'll be representing the ministry this evening. In terms of the outline, I will share some statistics on the government's fiscal and debt performance. I will also highlight some issues and opportunities, and I will then conclude with the recommendations. With regards to the table before you, there are a number of fiscal indicators presented, but I would just like to highlight two main indicators that are usually of interest when someone wants to know how the government has performed. The first indicator is the overall balance, which is total revenue and grants minus total expenditure, and it can either be a surplus, where revenue is more than expenditure, or a deficit where the expenditure exceeds revenue. So, as you see in the table, in 2021, the government would have achieved an overall surplus of 5.8% of GDP and a deficit of 3.9% of GDP in 2022. And then we're projecting a surplus of 0.9% of GDP in this year. As at September, a surplus has been achieved so far, and we hope that by the end of the year, this trend will continue. It's important to note, when preparing the budget, the government always strives to present a balanced budget, where the estimated revenues could at least cover the proposed expenditures. Another indicator that I would like to highlight is the public sector debt, which is usually expressed as a percentage of GDP, or gross domestic product. It is a regional benchmark where the countries within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, including St. Kitts and Nevis, should not have their debt levels greater than 60% of GDP. So how have we been performing in recent years with regards to our debt? Well, as you see in the table, consistent with the decline in debt service, the debt to GDP ratio has been trending downwards. And we see for 2021, the ratio was 69.1% of GDP. In 2022, 63.2%. And we are projecting 55.4% for this year, which would be below the target of 60%. But how does this benefit you? Well, it creates fiscal space, or more money, or access to more money to fund other programs such as healthcare. This chart shows the various sources of government's revenue. So, for example, non-tax revenue, which is the blue section, is the largest category, which accounts for about 57% of total revenue and grants. And this category includes, but not among other things, hospital fees, water and postal services fees, as well as CBI proceeds. Other sources of revenue include domestic goods and consumption. These are collected by the Inland Revenue Department, while trade taxes, such as import duty and VAT, these are collected by the Customs and Excise Department. We see also the various categories of expenditure, where the green portion represents the wage bill, that is salaries, wages, and allowances paid to our public servants. And this accounts for 32.6% of total expenditure, which is the largest expenditure of the government. There's also goods and services, that's in red, accounting for 24.9% of total expenditure, and transfers, 22.8%. And transfers, these include expenditure related to public assistance, such as PAP, the income support programs, support to public operations, as well as the Nevis Island administration. With regards to capital expenditure, that accounts for 18% of total expenditure. This category relates to, for example, building roads, hospitals, and schools, and so forth. So, given our thrust to become a sustainable island state, which categories do you think the government should focus on? Should it be, for example, salaries and wages, transfers, or perhaps capital expenditure? Something to think about. Our journey towards a sustainable island state would require financing, that is, sustainable financing. And it is therefore important that the government pursue initiatives that would strengthen its finances. One such initiative is for the government to save some of its revenues. And why? Well, these savings could provide self-insurance to respond to the effects of climate change and to support resilience building, as well as transformational public sector investment projects. So ultimately, we would want to use these funds to generate sustainable growth. Another option is for the government to improve the administration of its taxes to ensure equity and efficiency of the tax system. So, in addition to maintaining stable finances, the government will also need to enhance its economic growth prospects. What does that mean? You know, sometimes we hear people in the community say, you know, nothing is happening in the economy, things slow. But what are your thoughts then on what activities the government should pursue to help generate greater economic activity? Should it be in the area of renewable energy? Or should the government seek to diversify the economy and look beyond tourism as its main engine of growth? What are your thoughts? If the government strives to maintain stable finances and pursue activities that would help the economy reach its full growth potential, then we will be well on our way to building the momentum towards achieving the sustainable island state status. These are some recommendations that we are putting forward. So the government could first strengthen the economy's ability to withstand external shocks or disruptions through economic diversification and enhancing the management of public finances. It should also pursue other revenue-generating activities instead of using the CBI proceeds to fund recurrent programs. When it comes to productivity, we should pay serious attention to increasing productivity, especially in the public sector, to ensure efficient delivery of government services. We also hear a lot about digital transformation and renewable energy, including geothermal and solar energy. These are investments that we should scale up to enhance our growth prospects. Finally, we believe that the National Development Plan should be implemented to ensure that our Sustainable Island State agenda becomes a reality. In conclusion, and from the Ministry of Finance perspective, preparing a budget is not an easy task. So it's just like our own personal finances, where you have a set income, but you have a set income, but a long list of needs and wants that you expect that level of income would pay for. Similar to this household budget, when it comes to the government's budget, there are competing priorities with limited resources. Therefore, it would not be possible for the government to accommodate all the requests in one fiscal year. So we welcome your thoughts, your ideas, on what programs that could be prioritized in the 2024 fiscal year. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Francis. While Ms. Henry prepares her presentation on the overview of the economic development, we remind our online audience to present your questions. We also welcome your comments and recommendations.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Henry, and I'm an economist within the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment. And I will be discussing the economic development outlook from 2024 to 2030, which is the medium term. So this is our agenda for tonight. I'm just going to do a brief overview of the GDP growth in the medium term, the key industries, the National Development Planning Framework, the linkage between the SIS and the NDPF, and community involvement. So firstly, the GDP growth from 2024 to 2030 and what that means in the medium term. So as you can see, there is the trajectory, as we can see right now, is that we won't see full recovery until 2025. However, this is in line with the activity that we are seeing on the ground right now. However, full recovery is expected, and after that, we're going to see sustained growth in the medium term. So what are the key indicators for this recovery? So we're looking at construction, tourism, transportation, storage and communication, financial services, real estate, renting and business activities, public administration, labor markets, and wholesale and retail. I'm just going to warn you now, these graphs will look like each other, but that is just to be expected. So firstly, construction. So again, we're seeing that we're not going to see full growth in construction until 2025. And when we say full growth, I am comparing it to the 2019 baseline, which is pre-COVID. And so after 2025, we're going to see that not so robust, but sustained growth in the medium term. And this is going to be predicated on anticipated developments in the public and private sector with the key implementation of economic and social infrastructure. So, your housing, the building of schools and hospitals, as well as the road improvement that is currently happening. For hotels and restaurants, this is the tourism industry. So we're going to see that really robust growth. And as you can see, 2020, it really suffered, and that even more in 2021. And then, as you can see, it picked up. This is in line with what Mr. Agard would have said with regards to the relaxation of the blockades from visitors, and then you see that sustained growth in the medium term. And this is, as I was saying, this is in line with anticipated increases in arrivals but visitors by both air and sea, as well as enhancements by the expansion of our airlifts and enhancements in our air and seaports. Transport, storage, and communication. So similar to the other sectors, we again see that in 2024, it will not fully recover. However, after that full recovery in 2025, it's going to have strong growth going forward. And this is because the individual sectors under that overall sector is expected to grow. So air, we're expecting a growth of 8.9%, communications by 4.2%, sea by 17.7%, and by land, air 1.8%. Financial services, so you're going to see that financial services was one of the quickest to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was fully recovered by 2021, but we don't see that robust growth until after. And then in the medium term, you can see it grow stronger and stronger, and this is because as we see the transformation of the financial sector, whether that be to mobile apps and the reforms in the sector, we're going to see that really robust growth over time. Real estate, renting, and business activity. So you can see that this was another really strong sector, and it should be fully recovered by 2023. And so with an expected annual growth of 1.6%. So this is a really robust sector, which is quite hopeful. Public administration. This sector is a major player in our economy, and it compromises about 9.9% of GDP, which seems small, but when you compare it to other sectors, it is quite important. And so we're expecting that by 2020, it was already recovered by 2022, and we're going to see that really robust growth in the long term by about 4.5%. And this is to accommodate this is attributed to new hiring, so like what Agard said with the regularization of step workers, increases in salaries, and incremental payments as well. So the labor markets, So one thing you'll notice is that we don't have projections for the labor markets. However, that is because we're using real figures. So we see in the half year, what we see right now is that it has not fully recovered. It's about 95.4%. However, we are projecting by the end of this year, it should be fully recovered to 2019 levels. And finally, wholesale and retail. So again, we see that it might not fully recover until 2025, and it's going to exhibit strong growth over the medium term. And this is related to activities in the construction sector as well as the tourism sector. So in summary, the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis is going to experience really robust growth following the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is going to be predicated on high levels of investment by both public, private, domestic, and foreign investments in the country. However, this is not going to be done in a silo as it was before. Instead, we are going to be using the National Development Planning Framework, which will serve as the guide for, it will serve as the vehicle towards the economic developments along our NDCs, which is the National Determined Contributions, and our Urban Development Plan. The NDPF has 6 pillars. They include climate resilience, green energy transformation, economic development, human capital development, inclusivity and social protections, and institutional strengthening and partnership. And as you can see by the graph, the SIS is also there with its pillars, and that is because the SMS was formed out of the NDPF to just serve as another vehicle to which we want to see the economic development, so a more green country. So how does the NDPF relate to the budget? Well, there are several ways. So the NDPF, and this is for line ministries, we have a lot of government workers here. So all of you are aware that each line ministry has its own projects, policies, and plans that you will use to facilitate the work in your ministry. However, once the NDPF is implemented, it is expected that you will have to review and perhaps realign these things to ensure that they are in alignment with the NDPF. So it is important, especially when it comes to projects. So coming 2024, please review the NDPF and ensure that your ministry is going alongside the NDPF. For investments, how will the NDPF guide investments? So we are looking at several different ways. So on the energy, we're looking at the use of renewables. As you can see, so we're looking at renewables as well as the update of our current electrical infrastructure, both in St. Kitts and Nevis. For human capital, we're looking at the transformation of our educational sector. That is, we're looking to move away from our traditional curricula and moving it towards a more green something, especially in our trade divisions. So AVEC and TVET, we're looking to make them more green, so that way they're more able to accommodate this new workspace, especially when it comes to electric vehicles, as well as how students access higher education. For economic infrastructure, we're looking at our current infrastructure and seeing how best can we develop it so that it is more not only climate resilient, but also greener. So it's important that we look at these things and the investments under them and seeing how we can best suit it towards the NDPF. For economic development, it involves the diversification of our key sectors. So how can we transform our key sectors to make it more sustainable, to make it more economically viable? So that is what we're looking at, especially, and how do we develop it so that it is more inclusive? So developing a blue economy, an orange economy, which is marine resources as well as entertainment. So finally, you might be asking yourself, well, what does this mean for me as a citizen, the graphs as well as the NDPF? Well, it is important that we achieve the growth that we are projecting, because for you as citizens, for those, and these are just some examples, for those of you that are working in the construction industry, an increase in that sector means that you're going to see more employment, whether it be workmen, masons, persons that are just vending to these people. For the tourism sector, that means those of you that are taximen, maybe you work in hotels, you want to see that uptick in activity so that way, you can either increase employment in that sector or make more money. For wholesale and retail, which is closely related to the two prior sectors, it is important that you as persons keep knowledgeable about the projects that are going on. So what construction activities are going on, what tourism product is going on, so that way if you have a business, you can adjust it accordingly. So real estate renting and business activities, for those of you that have houses on rent or are planning to rent, keep abreast of what is happening because as you can see by the graph, there is a lot of activity projected in that sector. Transport, storage, and communications, for the taxi drivers, for those that do trucking. This is a sector that is expecting a lot of activity. So again, stay abreast, stay aware, and expect activity in that sector. And finally, for financial services, we are gonna see, again, everybody spending their money as usual. So we're gonna continue to see a lot of growth in that sector. And I just wanted to point out one more thing. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Regarding you and the NDPF, what are the regular citizens supposed to do with the National Development Planning Framework? So you might not have the money or the investments to do anything, but it is important that when it is released, that you as everyday citizens read through it and see how you can best implement it in your everyday life, in your community, in your families. So even if it's a small thing like recycling or putting up a solar panel, it's important. So I encourage each and every single one of you to read it when it is released. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. I appreciate the fact that you realize you're over time. Thanks. Okay, so I would like to thank all the presenters. Their presentations this evening form just a small part of why we're here. The real reason why we're here is to hear from you, the general public. So at this time, I invite your questions, comments, recommendations. I don't want to believe that none of you have any questions or comments or recommendations. The presentations were all clear? Yes, sir? Can we have a mic on my right, please?
Good night to everyone. I want to go back and put it on what was established before. The $5,000 that the government is giving to small business is a very good idea. But look at it from a different angle. When they get a $5,000, is anybody doing any back checking in the sense of accounting to make sure that whatever they say they're going to do, they're going to that particular project? That is one. The other thing is, in the Ministry of Finance, when people need to know that right now there's a levy arm, say from October to sometime next year, what they call peak season. That alone is kind of the cost of living. Is anything that the government could do in the sense of like if you got a container and it's 12,000 and the other charges might bring it up to 20. Is there any way they could drop that, they could walk the duty based on the 12,000? One of the other thing is that when you look at small business, they bring in the goods, wherever they think, they got to pay all the duty up front before they start to sell. Whereas the big companies, them got abandoned warehouse. They throw the goods in there, they take it out when they want, they pay a card. If they take out 100 cases or whatever, they pay for that. But the small man now got to take up all his money and use it up front to clear his good. The government needs serious to put abandoned warehouse for small business, but got it under good control. That is all for now that I got to commit, and I might come back.
Thank you, sir. I will now yield the floor to the Permanent Secretary for the Small Business Development Center, Miss Miss Taylor, sorry, Miss Delween Taylor, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just here to address the gentleman's concern in relation to the $5,000 grant that was given to small business person. It was an initiative through partnership, so it was not government funded. You know, in our celebration for 40th anniversary, one of the struggles small businesses face is access to finance. So when we partner with persons, that's one of the first things we put on the table. So we received funding for 40 persons to receive $5,000. And there was a committee that was in place for the selection. And one of the requirements was for persons to submit how they're going to use the funds in the business. And at the ministry, we have what you call a monitoring and evaluation program that after those monies would have been expensed, we would go out to the various businesses to make sure that the monies were spent on what they indicated they would need the monies for, and follow up with them on a regular basis to make sure that these businesses thrive. In relation to the duty-free concession, I don't know if you are aware, we've been going through the community. We were here at Old Road sometime last month, inviting all the small business persons to come on out and hear what the ministry has to offer. And we currently offer import duty concessions for small business persons, bringing in, you know, their inputs and whatever it is for daily operations for the business. Even if you purchase some of those items right here in Ireland, the ministry offer concessions to those businesses. So if you're not aware, you visit us at our Port Zanta location, Building 16, where you could get additional information on that.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. The Prime Minister would like to give an input.
Thank you very much, PS. I think you answered comprehensively, but I think the gentleman also asked a robust question. Just to follow up on the support for small businesses, there was a loan, program, which was a small business loan program by the Development Bank that we would have heard of. And just to say to you that that interest rate was about 0.5%, very low. And to support your point with small businesses, of all the customers, we had about 390 loans within the last year. New loans that was given by the Development Bank to our citizens to strengthen their businesses after COVID and to even start small businesses. But the very good point to make is that when they look at the payments, the delinquency rate is only 2%. What does that mean? That of these 390 loans, the vast majority of persons are paying back, which is saying to us that there must have been a good process of screening. There must have been a good process of really helping these small businesses to get back on track. But it also means that our citizens have responded very well in terms of taking a loan, restructuring their businesses or starting new businesses, and creating enough economic activity to pay back. So when I saw these numbers and I saw especially what Ms. Henry would have presented, it seems like that there's some actual increase in economic activity. But your point is taken. This is evidence that if you support small businesses in the right way, they will respond positively. So I think that the trend is that the small business ministry should continue to strengthen its support system of small businesses here in St. Kitts and Nevis, especially, as he said, help the small man a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Back. the permanent secretary, she didn't answer the question. I'm saying that when you bring in the goods, you got to pay for them right away. No leeway in there. But when the big business bring a container, they could try it in a banded warehouse. Nothing there. So they, wherever capital cash you give them, they got to use it right away. You need something like that to help small business. I in it. So I know when I bring in a shipment from Dominica, no matter what it costs, I got to bring all the cash up front to custom. But the big business, them could throw half of it into a banded warehouse. And if they want 20 boxes, they're going and they take out 20 boxes. That's all I'm saying. Do something like that to help the small business. And I ain't no lobbying about it. I'm lobbying about it since before 2015. I'm lobbying and making noise about that kind of treatment for small business. Because you look at it that a lot of these companies in here, they're getting up to 120 days line of credit. We now got to go and buy from them, give them the money to turn around, and we now got to struggle to pay back with stuff. I mean, these are things that I think. Mr. PM, I need to talk to you, but in a different forum, not tonight. Not right now, in the presence of everybody.
Thank you, sir. Your concern has been recorded. Do we have any more questions, comments, recommendations? Any more questions, comments, recommendations?
I didn't want to take the mic, but as it relates to creatives, I know that at large it was mentioned that creatives are being factored into and so forth and so forth. I know that the AG is here and there was the start of the WIPO conference today. Is it possible to have an update on where we stand with St. Kitts and Nevis's participation in specifically YouTube's monetization program? I think it is that some laws have to be passed or something. I've spoken about this before. I've asked about it when Akila Byron Nesbitt was minister. I don't know if there has been an update or if there has been a change, but yes, YouTube and creatives in St. Kitts and Nevis being able to make money from our YouTube content.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Can we have the mic to the Attorney General, please?
Good evening. Thank you for the question. I'm not particularly familiar with that issue. It hasn't come to my desk yet. But I have some experience with, when I was in private practice, dealing with Apple and companies like Netflix being able to operate in a different space. And what that was is really them finding out if they are in compliance with local law to be able to operate their services. So it's not really a matter of us saying to them, we want you to be able to allow our creatives to monetize through YouTube. It's for them to say, we are ready to come into a different market. And then they will contact local counsel, get legal advice as to whether their contracts fit within the space of St. Kitts and Nevis, within the legal framework. And if they don't, then they will come to us and say, well, there needs to be this legislative change to be able to facilitate the monetization. So it really originates from the company itself and whether they want. So what you should probably do is communicate with them, ask if I don't know who YouTube is owned by ultimately, by Google. So you could contact Google and say, are you willing to allow persons from this market to monetize in this market? Because I do know, because I know an influencer who got very popular, I think, on TikTok and had millions of views, somebody from this area, this constituency, and could not locally monetize had to set up an account in the US for the money to be paid into that account. So I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but the best way to probably do it is speak to the Ministry of Creative Economy, see if they are willing to lead the charge on behalf of the influencers to then communicate directly with the Google and then say, listen, we have people who want to monetize. Do you want to come here? If they say yes, are your laws suitable? Then we could then correspond with the creative economy, make whatever amendments are necessary to then facilitate the monetization.
Thank you, AG. Do we have any more questions, comments?
Good night, everyone, and good night to those who are listening and viewing online. My name is Brian, and my question is very simple. For persons who have or would have received lands back in 2009, that's over 10 years ago, with no sort of infrastructure, whether it is roads, water, or electricity, to start building, is there something that would be placed in the budget for 2024? I know that the ministry, they would encourage possible homeowners to, start to build first, and then we come in with the infrastructure. But when you're gonna have land over 10 years and you don't have access, or you cannot have access to your land, and I'm speaking about land that has been paid off for, is there something that will be put in place to encourage people to actually start to build, people to go into these areas that they would, well, I see the minister just arrived, probably from my question.
So can you?
Yes. Okay, so I think that was a warm-up, actually. Good night. Yes. Right, so I'm just trying to find out if things would change. It is very disheartening, and I'm not trying to bash anyone, but it is very disheartening for landowners who have land and cannot get proper access to their lands or even infrastructure to start to build their homes. And I personally believe that infrastructure should be placed first, then you start to give out the lands, not just give out lands just to gain support. But I just want to know if something is actually in place. And to be more specific, I'm speaking about Caribbean View development that is in Stoneford. I would have received my land back in 2009. Over a year ago, I was given a dirt road. And to this time, I still don't have access to my land. I have to pay someone every month to cut the road just so I can maintain the road to my land, because I don't have any other choice. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Before we proceed, I acknowledge the presence of the Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Action, Constituency Empowerment, the Honorable Dr. Joyelle Clark. I now invite the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Chesdor Tyson, to respond to your question.
Good evening, everyone. And sir, I feel you, and I thank you for your question. And I'm happy to report that because we feel you, we have decided to do something about it. Over the last 6 months or so, we've had over 300 applicants for relocations. And when we discuss with these people, why are you asking for relocation? Almost every one of them said the very same, expressed the very same sentiment. There's no infrastructure. And so the ministry went back to the drawing board, and we are saying, listen, we can't do all 27 subdivisions in 1 year, but we're going to start with 3. So hopefully next year, we will have 3 divisions, and then as we go along, because we see the need for infrastructure. I mean, he's right. Some people have had lands for over 20 years, and they can't go any further. And so we hear your plea, we feel your plea, and we are going to do something about it, hopefully very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, PS. Any more questions, comments, recommendations? If there are no more questions or recommendations or comments, I now invite the Prime Minister to give closing remarks.
Let me have a stand over here. I'll be able to be seen by all. All right, good night to all who are here. First, let me recognize, of course, all the members of Cabinet who are here with us this evening. And to also say to you that the Honorable Marsha Henderson is not here with us. She is recovering at this time peacefully at the JNF Hospital and will be discharged home very, very soon. I saw her this morning and she's in good spirits and ready to come back to work, but I instructed that she has to take vacation. And so we all want to wish her a speedy recovery. I want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister, the CABSEC, Minister Iselin Phillip, AG Garth Wilkin, Minister Dr. Joy Clark, the Ambassadors Kenneth Douglas and Ambassador Leonata IFS, who is here, and members of the Ministry of Finance, and also the other PSs who are here, the head table, and of course, those who are from the public live or in person, and those who are joining us through the social media and through other means. We have started a new process here in St. Kitts and Nevis where we want the budget discussion not to be held just in government offices and in nice places like the Marriott, but to utilize the community center and to have community engagement, citizen engagement, on one of the most important aspects of the government's function that would affect their lives. As the gentleman said tonight, his small business is being affected by government policy, and he would like to see a difference to see if that can enhance his small business and other small businesses. And I note that we took his suggestion or his concern, and it really would be looked at and see what can be done with respect to that. And that is the type of engagement that we need. This government does not purport to have all of the answers. And even if it does think that it has all of the answers, I think it needs to rethink that and engage you, the people in the communities, to get a greater sense of what is really affecting you and to have a budget that would respond to your realities. Because sometimes something looks very nice on paper and this match that and match this, and you say, look, this is a textbook budget. And anybody would say, think it's Ministry of Finance and the ministers, they have done a good job. But then you come to Old Road and you walk across the road and a man sitting down on the corner tell you, boy, look, things tight over here because I can't get my shop off the ground. How is the budget going to respond to that? So that is why we want this type of community engagement at the grassroots level. So whatever comes out of the budget debate in 2023 for the budget in 2024 would reflect what the people on the ground, what the people in the communities, what the citizens are actually saying. And so we expect, as we go along into next year and the year after, God's willing, that we would have even more robust debate so that we can create the best scenario for our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The government, in my opinion, does not run the show. The people run the show. And therefore, the people must be given the opportunity to influence the budget as far as possible. Of course, you have the professionals within the government who would put what is gleaned to be important for the citizens in a framework that is workable so that we can have a system that, of course, that would not crash, but would eventually respond to your needs. So what is the main objective also of the budget? Is to create a sustainable island state. And I think that Ms. Henry pointed out how the National Development Plan links to the Sustainable Island State Plan and how both of them dovetail. It is very critical, and I want to bring the message to the communities, that we face the existential threat. Big words to mean, boy, things rough with the climate change. You could get big hurricanes that could mash up the country, mash up your house, we can't recover. And all these nice plans that were spoken about that the budget we expect some growth and we expect to recover and so forth. All that can be thwarted or thrown off track if we were to get hit by a major hurricane, which can wipe out percentages of our GDP and then put us back on a pathway to recovery. And even before we recover, we can be hit again by another category 5, and then that can take us downhill. And so as we look at the budget and we look at the prospects and they seem positive, there are serious threats out there. And climate change is one of them that is not going away right now. And that is why we have to develop a sustainable island state, that whatever we do is sustainable. Whatever we do deals with the issue of resilience, which means we can survive the shocks. And it means that we have to adapt. It is sad that we in these parts are affected most by climate change, and we contributed very little to the issue. And that is why we speak of climate justice. This thing is as big as colonization and all other injustices that affected people around the world that people fought for. The thing is, we don't have the same fight as we had on the road to independence and so forth when it comes to climate justice. But this is possibly the biggest issue of injustice that's affecting us today. You'll see wars and people fighting against people as people start fighting for resources. At climate changes and people move from one area to the next. If we are hit by 2 back-to-back category 5 and people walk out, my house destroyed, I can't build it back, no insurance taking me, I'm going to pack my bag and move to the US because I have a green card anyway. Or move to Canada. And therefore, these are the real issues that I want us to start to consider as citizens, and for us to dialogue and discuss and sit down and see how we can earnestly come up with ideas and plans of how to deal with this serious threat. And that is why we want to develop a sustainable island state with the pillars and the plans that are here so that we can be in the best situation possible. The other threat we have is the CBI. And as you can see, a big part of it, because we are still in recovery, is the CBI. And I think Ms. Henry showed, is either Ms. Peets, Francis, yes, would have shown a graph, I think, a pie chart rather, showing the percentage or the slice of the CBI, which was a significant slice. And part of the plan has to be how can we cut that down? Not that we want to cut CBI revenues, but our dependency on it in terms of our current budget and supporting our social programs and so forth. That is a critical matter because, again, we cannot go from one major sector to depend on another major sector. It is supposed to be diversified. So you can have CBI, which is an important economic part of the economy. You can have tourism. You can have agriculture. You can have the creative economy. You can have multiple sectors within the framework of our overall economy contributing so that we are diversified, which puts us in a better position to resist shocks, whether it is natural disaster, man-made disaster, or any other type of disaster that can affect us. So these are the kind of ways we want to think and to stimulate our thoughts as we build out the best scenario for St. Kitts and Nevis to continue to grow. So I'll finally wrap up by saying that we do appreciate your coming out. We do appreciate the fact that there were those who would have joined us online as we bring the budget debate, or the budget discussion rather, conversation to you, the people who would be affected directly by this law that will be passed in December to determine how the government is going to really manage its resources in 2024. So I want to thank all of you once again and let the conversations continue as we build towards a sustainable island state. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Prime Minister, but forgive me, allow me to ask a question that we missed online. Thank you. The question, have we or Federation made any progress in meeting our contributions or goals regarding the Paris Agreement? I'll have the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Climate Action answer that question. Ms. Williams?
Hi. Good night again, everyone. So the guiding framework for the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, and Constituent Empowerment is our nationally determined contributions. And so This policy document guides what we do with regard to the Paris Agreement. This policy was approved in October of 2021. The particulars of which will be shared with the public as we proceed with our Sustainable Island State agenda. So the answer is yes, that we are proceeding with this agreement. It's a part of the overall environment and climate action framework for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you, Pierce. And thank you all for attending this consultation. We appreciated your questions, your comments, your recommendations, and they were all recorded and will be forwarded to the relevant authorities for consideration and action. I now call on Brenton Skeet, Budget Analyst in the Ministry of Finance, to give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenton Skeet, Budget Analyst in the Ministry of Finance, and I have been tasked with delivering the vote of thanks. Please allow me to adopt the protocol that was so ably established. Safe and accept to acknowledge the presence of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Dew, and the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley. I would first like to thank the Almighty God for allowing us to gather here. This gathering has provided the opportunity for the community to dialogue with us and create an avenue for sharing of ideas to be implemented in the 2024 budget. Everyone's input is critical to achieving the nation's goal of becoming a sustainable island state. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the moderator, Mrs. Matthew, Senior Information Officer for SKNIS, Miss Williams, Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment, Mr. Agard, from Statistics Department in the Sustainable Development, Mrs. Francis, Director of Fiscal Affairs and Policy, and Mrs. Henry, Economist, from the Ministry of Economic Development and Investment. The panel before you spoke so eloquently and did not shun away when they were called upon to perform their task, which we are grateful for. Now, as we come to the end of the consultations, I want to thank the public for giving us your support. I hope that all your questions were answered in the best way possible, and the responses were very precise and clear. Be assured that your suggestions are noted, and we will take them into further consideration. Nonetheless, we appreciate everyone coming out to support the budgetary process, and I would like to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for the wonderful idea of the consultations, which were a success. Thank you, everyone, and have a safe journey home.
Thank you, Mr. Skeet, but I am not married. Thanks. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our consultation, this final consultation for this year. We're still encouraging you to present your comments, your questions, your recommendations. You could always go to the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service Facebook pages, and you can always email us. You can also reach out to the Ministry of Finance, and we'll be glad to accommodate you. On your way out, we have some light refreshments. Enjoy and get home safe.